What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video we have a super fun build that literally turns you into a chopper gunner. Okay, well, not literally, but you'll definitely feel like a chopper gunner when you are running this build. It centers around the recently buffed exotic Wings of Sacred Dawn. In the exotic preview from a couple months ago, Bungie talked about how reloading kills your float, so now they gave it the ability to reload your weapon when you get kills while aiming down sights. This is important to note as it will not reload your weapon if you are hip firing. But this makes sense as you also lose your float when you're not aiming down sights. So if we read the exotic perk on Wings of Sacred Dawn, it is called Tome of Dawn, and it states, when Dawnblade is equipped, aiming weapons while you're mid-air suspends you there for a short time, reducing incoming flinch and granting damage resistance. Weapon hits extend this effect's duration, and weapon final blows reload your solar weapons from reserves. Provides a large benefit to the airborne effectiveness stat of all weapons. So that is a pretty long description, but I want to really hone in on how this works because it is important for you to know. The perk says weapon final blows reload your solar weapons, but again, that is only when aiming down sights while suspended in air. I just want to make that clear so you know exactly how this works. As you can see in the background gameplay, I shoot some shots in my solar weapon magazines to get the ammo down. I then get an ADS kill while on the ground and it does not reload my solar weapons. I then jump in the air and get a hipfire kill, and again, my solar weapons do not get reloaded. I then get a kill while in the air and ADSing, and you can see my weapons get reloaded. Again, it is important for you to know that this is how it works because this is the gameplay loop for the whole build. I like to run rockets with this build, but your rocket launcher will not automatically reload if you do not ADS it. If you just hipfire it, the mag will stay empty until you reload or get another ADS kill while in air. So now that we know exactly how this exotic works, let's dive deeper into the rest of that description. The Destiny Data Compendium has some good additional info here for us. It says it grants 50 AE to all weapons, as well as 25% flinch resistance and 15% damage resistance. It also states that scoring a weapon kill refills your solar weapon magazines, and that this works with your stowed weapons as well, as we just saw. So now that we know how it works, let's look at the aspects to run. You need heat rises, as this pairs perfectly with the playstyle. When you consume your grenade, you activate heat rises. This allows you to fire weapons, melee, and throw grenades while gliding. And final blows while airborne increase the duration of heat rises and grant melee energy. So when you activate heat rises, it grants cure ×2 and heat rises is active for 15 seconds. And then kills will extend the timer up to 30 seconds. All the data from the Destiny Data Compendium is on screen now if you want more detailed info. But basically, you want to activate heat rises and then get kills from the sky. Trust me, I will get to how to make this completely OP momentarily. Next, this aspect is optional. I prefer Icarus Dash for a couple reasons over Touch of Flame. First is with heat rises active, you get 2 Icarus Dashes instead of 1. And that in-air mobility is really nice for dodging enemy attacks to keep you alive, as well as traversing the skies and helping you get around easier. Next is that rapidly defeating targets while airborne actually grants you Cure, which is just another way to help you stay alive. And the other big reason I like Icarus Dash is this build is all based around using your weapons to down enemies. Something that is becoming more and more rare as our abilities grow in strength and we can spam them more often than ever. So yes, Touch of Flame is nice for beefing up your grenades, but ability spam is secondary with this build. We consume our grenade to get the ball rolling on heat rises, and then just toss it on groups of enemies every once in a while to help with ad clear. So for me, heat rises and Icarus Dash all day. So now we get to the fragments, and these really make this build OP as they allow us to abuse constant radiant and restoration ×2, which in most content pretty much makes you invincible. So there are 3 non-negotiable fragments that we have to run, and then the 4th one is up to you. The first one is Ember of Solace. Radiant and restoration effects applied to you have increased duration. So normally these buffs can go up to 8 seconds long, I believe, but this allows them to go to 12 seconds. But where this comes in really clutch is when we pair it with Phoenix Dive. So normally Phoenix Dive cures you, but when Heat Rises is active, you gain restoration ×2 while diving, and you scorch targets upon landing. So this is how we become nearly invincible. We consume our grenade for Heat Rises, and then Phoenix Dive to get restoration ×2 for 5 seconds. But here is what allows us to have permanent uptime on our restoration ×2 so long as there are ads around to kill. We throw on Ember of Empyrean, which allows solar weapon or ability final blows to extend the duration of restoration and radiant. So after we Phoenix Dive, we just get a quick solar kill and this extends our timer. We get another one and boom, we have 12 seconds of restoration ×2, which means we have 12 seconds to find another target and kill them with our solar weapon or ability to re-extend the timer. And then we can give ourselves a big damage boost with Radiant as well. Radiant is a 25% damage boost to all weapons, and with Ember of Torches, all we have to do is land a melee attack to make us Radiant. And then once again, Ember of Empyrean can extend this timer with Solar Final Blows, again up to 12 seconds. So with these 3 fragments, we can have permanent 25% damage bonus, as well as huge restoration to keep us alive. On top of that, we have damage resistance from Tome of Dawn, and we are getting Cure from Icarus Dash for rapidly defeating enemies. The only way to die with this build is in something like a GM, or if you get super focused on by a ton of ads, or like Shriekers and tier 3 Altars of Summoning. Other than that, you can out-heal most damage. For the 4th fragment, I run Ember of Searing for the plus 10 to recovery, which helps our Phoenix Dive cooldown. It allows us to create a Fire Sprite, which gives us grenade energy, and we get melee energy back for defeating scorched targets. So depending on your weapon of choice, you may be scorching lots of enemies. And Heat Rises already gives a ton of melee energy to begin with. And speaking of melees, we want to run Celestial Fire here. It can land on enemies at a long distance to proc Radiant, which is really important because you are in the air a lot with this build, so you're not super close to enemies, so the Incinerator Snap would not be a good choice. So again, the gameplay loop is like this. Consume your grenade, Phoenix Dive and throw out a melee to activate Radiant and Restoration ×2, and then get a solar weapon kill as fast as possible to extend the duration. That is why Ember of Solace is so nice. It grants you more time to get that initial solar kill to get the whole train moving. Once you do that, you just rain fire down on all the ads. This build is definitely amazing for ad clear, but it is not great for single target damage as you need to get kills to automatically reload your weapon and extend Restoration and Radiant. So if no ads are around, this build does kind of fall apart. But in a coordinated enough team, you could be the ad clear guy and let your teammates focus the high health targets so that you can keep your buffs up. Anyways, as if this build wasn't strong enough on its own, we have mods that can make it even stronger. On the helmet, it is a no-brainer, but we are running Heavy Ammo Finder and Solar Siphon. We'll be making a ton of orbs of Solar Siphon, and I like to use an exotic primary, which helps drop even more heavy ammo. On the arms, we have Impact Induction, which is amazing here. Causing damage with a melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown. Again, you get melees like crazy thanks to Heat Rises as well as Ember of Searing, so toss out your melee a lot as it will help with your grenade cooldown. In the game footage, I was also running Fastball. You are high in the air, so it is nice to be able to chuck your grenade further and faster. I also had on Firepower, though I don't think that this is necessary. Your Solar Siphon makes tons of orbs as is, so I would actually go for Focusing Strike here instead, which grants class ability energy when you deal damage with your melee. This way you are getting class ability energy back as well as grenade energy when you are chucking out your melees. And the Phoenix Dive is nice to have in a pinch, especially because I run pretty low recovery with this build, so Fastball, Impact Induction, and Focusing Strike would be my choices now that I have experience with the build. On the chest, it is pretty straightforward. Depending on the activity, pick the elemental resist that is most prevalent. Sniper damage resistance isn't bad since you are in the air a lot and exposed to snipers, and in lower end content, you could just go with solar reserves for more solar heavy ammo. On the boots, probably no surprise since this build is all about weapons, but we have 2 weapon surges on for 17% more solar weapon damage, and then I run 1 solar scavenger as well. Heavy finder bricks give less ammo back, so with a rocket, which is what I like to run in this build, you will get 2 rockets back instead of 1. It is also great for something like Xenophage. You could also go with 3 solar surges though if you want for even more firepower. And on the class item, I have a time dilation mod to extend our weapon surge timer, Bomber for grenade energy back when we Phoenix Dive, and lastly, Powerful Attraction so that when we Phoenix Dive, we will pick up all the orbs around us. This is great because you are not on the ground very often, so if you are out of surge mods while flying around, spot some orbs and do a quick Phoenix Dive and you will pick them all up. For stats, it's pretty standard, it's the same for all Warlock builds in PvE, max resilience, high discipline, and then as high of recovery as you can get. It's pretty simple. Resil for the DR, grenades because they're nice to have, and recovery for your Phoenix Dive cooldown. Now we get to the weapons. I like to run my God Roll Succession in the top slot. I mentioned the Shriekers and tier 3 Altars. A sniper is actually really great for dealing with a target at a long range so you don't get killed. I run Vex Mythoclast in the energy slot. Just like the exotic armor this build is based around, it too got a buff this season. It got its RPM reduced slightly, but it also got a 25% damage buff to red and orange bars. So it is a perfect ad killing machine, which is what this build is all about. It also has inherent rampage, so after one kill it will deal more damage. Then with weapon surges and radiant, it will deal even more damage. And exotic primaries already inherently deal 40% more damage to red bar enemies. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but weapon surges and radiant both stack. So with my setup, I get 17% from surges and 25% from radiant, which is a 46.25% damage increase. Trust me, this weapon slaps with this build. But I know not everyone in the game is a consistent raider, so Sunshot is a wonderful alternative here. Hand Cannon's also got a buff this season, and it's absolutely wrecking right now. And with Wings of Sacred Dawn, you will never have to reload it. Plus, it applies Scorch when it explodes an enemy, which activates Ember of Searing Forest to create tons of fire sprites. And then the cherry on top of the build to really focus into the Chopper Gunner fantasy, we have a bipod rocket. I'm not gonna lie, these feel really great right now. So when there is a beefier target, just fire off a couple rockets and you're good to go back to mowing down with Vex Mythoclast. Bungie also mentioned pairing it with Xenophage, and yes, I love Xeno and it totally slaps with this build, but ammo economy is a concern. But never having to reload it is absolutely amazing. However, there's a card that you can sometimes get this season in your deck of Whisper called Blades. Rapidly defeating combatants has a chance to drop heavy ammo, and this honestly drops heavy like crazy. So if you get this card, immediately put on Xenophage as you can literally just main the weapon. I can't find the footage of where this happened for me, but I literally did a whole tier 3 altars just using Xenophage and I was wrecking everything. If you didn't want to focus on primary damage so much, then machine guns could also pair really nicely with this build. The weapons are pretty much up to you, I am just giving my recommendations for things I like to run. And before we wrap things up, you can make this build even stronger still with seasonal artifact mods. Diviner's Discount will get you the Solar Scavenger for a cost of 1 instead of 3, Solar Elemental Orbs obviously to make a ton of Solar Orbs, Refreshing Pickups to give you ability energy back when you pick up an orb. You won't do this that often since you're airborne, but it can help your teammates out and may help you from time to time. And then Semi-Auto Striker to give us armor charge with landing precision hits with our sniper, and Rapid Fire Ranger to weaken long distance enemies with our sniper or Vex or whatever weapon you're using, just as long as you land crits. This is a 15% weaken to help you melt high health targets even quicker. And then lastly, we have Monochromatic Maestro for an additional 10% ability and weapon damage. Dealing damage with our solar guns will enhance our abilities, and then you chuck a grenade or melee which will give you 10% more weapon damage. And that is on top of weapon surges and radiant. So if you had 3 weapon surges, that would be 22% more damage, plus 25% from radiant, so that is 52.5% more damage. And then 10% on top of that from Maestro for a whopping 67.75% more solar weapon damage. It's just insane. For a super, I run Daybreak, but you can run Well of Radiance too if you like. And for the glide, Strafe is actually great here because with heat rises, it acts more like Burst Glide. But just go with whatever you're comfortable with. And with that, that is the end of the build. This was honestly such a fun build to make. I've actually been running it since the first week of this season, but finally got around to making a guide on it. Bipod Rockets got buffed this season, as did Vex Mythoclast and Wings of Sacred Dawn. So I love that it incorporated 3 recently buffed items to make one outstanding build. Wings of Sacred Dawn have been in the game since D2 Vanilla, and I remember rocking them with Voidwalker subclass because I was a complete noob, but also just liked how they looked. So to see them shine in this way is pretty cool. And GG's to Bungie on this buff and making them viable. I don't know if you really want to run this in GMs, but for much of the game's content, this build absolutely slaps, as you can probably tell from the background footage. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, then a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. I have a ton of awesome build guides still to make, so be sure to keep an eye out for those. I plan on doing at least one a week, and I can't wait to show you some of the crazy awesome builds I have developed. Anyways, if you made it this far, then you are awesome. I really appreciate you watching till the end. Have fun pretending to be an Apache helicopter, and take care.